So really want to get your voice in the room. And so we'll start with Monica. Monica, can you maybe just introduce yourself a little bit? I know I read the bio, but just introduce yourself and a little bit about the work that you're engaged in.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. I am Monica Gaines. As you stated, I am from Wayne County. Been a parent since 2013. Like you stated, I was in home visiting in the Healthy Families Wayne program. I started as a family in 2013. I became program assistant after I graduated from the program and maintained as a parent leader, then went on to become a parent coordinator. And I now actually serve as the supervisor to the very program that helps to provide me the services. And I also serve in a different capacity as a coordinator for the Education Development Center for the Home Visiting Coin and just really promoting parent leadership and advocacy across the board for families and just making sure that they are included in all parts of the work.
Thank you, Monica. Super glad to have you with us. Lise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Slati. My pronouns are he and they. Um, I am, as Jacob said, I'm a parent of two young kiddos and also a queer, trans, polyamorous person. I work for this nonprofit here in Kalamazoo called Erase that Jacob already told you about. The main thing that we do, well, our mission is Erase exists to eliminate structural racism and create a network of equitable anti-racist institutions and communities. And what I do is co-facilitate anti-racism workshops with the goal of shifting people's understanding from of racism from an individual or interpersonal thing to a systemic and structural uh, institutional problem that we have. So that's the main work of Erase, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Super glad to have you both with us, and we'll get into this conversation here momentarily. Just also want to give a quick note. We have a third guest panelist who is having little technical difficulties. Ms. Rokisha O'Neill, who is a parent advocate out of Detroit, Michigan, and is also working with the National Parents Union. And so we're really hoping we can also bring her voice in the space, but also just want to acknowledge her and the great work that she's doing on behalf of parents in Detroit and the National Parents Union. And so really appreciate you all for the work that you're doing around families, parents, and equity, in addition to being a parent in your own right. And so really want to get into this conversation. One, just want to acknowledge that we are in an interesting point in time in our nation and in the early childhood sector, and that now more than ever, I think our voice as parents in the early childhood sector are needed. And also want to acknowledge that when we say the word family and parents, oftentimes some of us can get a vision in our mind around what that looks like. And so I think it's important for us to acknowledge that what we have maybe viewed as family and parent dynamics is evolving and changing over time. And so as we're getting into this, just want to acknowledge that at ECIC and the National Center, when we say parent leadership or parents, we see that as an all-encompassing and inclusive term. So that can mean step parents, that can mean aunties, uncles, grandparents, fathers who are maybe in or out of the home, but really looking at all caregiving kin. And so we recognize that there is a diversity of caregiving kin in our nation and in our communities. And so it's important for us to kind of explore that. And for today's conversation, we are talking about tokenism. And so I think it's important as we kind of get started that we just talk about what is tokenism. And so a Google search would tell us that tokenism is a practice of making only a functionary or symbolic effort to be inclusive of members of a minority group, especially recruiting people from underrepresented groups. And so when we think about the early childhood sector, when we think about parents and families, it's important that we kind of explore this. And so, Monica, I want to start with you. In thinking about this idea of checking the box or tokenism, in your experience and your expertise, what suggestions may you have for organizations on how they can ensure that they are genuinely engaging parent leaders rather than just checking a box?
The first step to making sure you're genuinely is to check your own biases at the door. Make sure that you are aware of what you have as a barrier to allowing all voices to be in the room. I am a strong proponent of ask everyone. Never make the assumption that someone is too busy or that their lifestyle wouldn't allow for, or that there are other reasons or factors that you were placing on someone's life. Make sure that you ask everyone to be a part of the space, and then that you are doing what is necessary to remove any of the barriers so that they can genuinely engage in the work, provide the feedback, supports, resources that you would need. And then just being open, making sure that your table is ready. Did you do the work yourself? And then if you're asking someone to do it in the same way that we're being paid to be at these tables, make sure that you have the resources to pay parents to be there. Don't just assume that because someone's there that they are just there for the money or they're just there for any other kind of reasons. Make sure that you're doing what is necessary and needed to have everyone available to be there at the table.
So much, so much. Thank you for that. Um, Thank you for that. Lisa, I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts on that. Thinking about just broadly organizations checking the box, right? And thinking about your work doing anti-racism organizing. Any thoughts or opinion around maybe suggestions that you have for organizations on like digging deeper, going beyond kind of surface level engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So, what I'm thinking about first and foremost is relationships and authenticity. One of the things that I feel like we see all the time, well, I see it more often in Kalamazoo at like nonprofit board levels where I hear people talking about trying to recruit, majority white boards, trying to recruit people of color onto their boards because they've heard that diversity and inclusion and equity are important, but not understanding anything beyond that really, but just saying like, oh, we want increased diversity because we know we're supposed to. And so what that's really lacking is a deeper understanding about what the barriers are of the culture inside their organization or at the board level of their organization, why people of color might not want to be there. Um, but just thinking about sort of the antidote to that is actually developing true relationships with people, not like not doing that same thing, like going out and trying to find people of color, but like when people do join, actually making that effort to have vulnerable conversations, to build true relationship authentically, not to assume trust before having a relationship with a person, those sorts of things. Um, that's what I was going to offer. Thanks.
Really appreciate y'all both. Thank you for that. And I'll just what comes to mind when I hear y'all both speaking is so much, but that idea of like generically people don't necessarily care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so like the importance of relationships and acknowledging that when parents and families are interfacing with systems and institutions, having authentic relationships takes like mad intentionality. And that almost the way that our systems and institutions are designed is to create isolation and individualism and really kind of surface level relationships that are real transactional. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that because I've experienced that, right? As a parent leader and as an individual who's been asked to be that person of color on the board, but really don't feel like I'm being authentically, genuinely engaged, just feeling like I'm there to kind of take a space up. And so we don't want that for parent leaders. And thank y'all for that. And so, Lisa, I want to move on to you. Building on that question, what have you seen, again, in your anti-racist organizing experience around common pitfalls that lead to tokenism, and how can this be avoided by organizations?
Yeah, so I spoke to it a little bit already, and I want to just say I have less experience in the early childhood realm with this. I mean, I have young children, but like my professional experience is mostly with adults in nonprofit and various settings like that. And so so the examples that I have are not necessarily applied to that, but I have, as you're saying, and as we've said, experience as an anti-racist person in an anti-racist organization. And so I understand the sort of background about how we see in our culture tokenism working in general, and understand some of those pitfalls. So one of the things I already spoke about, right, was relationships and authenticity. But then I think there's also something to be said about accountability. And the when we use the word accountability in the way that I mean it in anti-racist settings, what we're talking about is not like who reports to who and did you get your tasks done. I think about accountability in that way, like hierarchies and that sort of thing. When I think about accountability in anti-racism and in parent engagement and all of these places, the ways we're talking about it, I think about like mutual flows of influence between people. It's really addressing power dynamics, which I noticed in the description of this webinar, where you have to be able to take into account that there's always power at play. And so when I think about accountability, it's about being able to be accountable to the parents that you're working with. Um, Actually following the leadership of the parents that you're working with, right? Not just having people filling seats like Jacob mentioned, but truly having a voice, having a say, sharing power with the other people that you're trying to get engaged. Now I know organizationally, structurally, there may be some challenges to sharing power because of who gets to make decisions. But if you make decisions that are truly informed by the people, the parents that you've invited in to be part of uh, your whatever the advisory councils wherever parents are engaged, and families are engaged, sharing power, actually listening to their voices, their suggestions, and making changes based on those. And then in addition to that, I mean, we're not always hiring and promoting people, but when those opportunities for hiring and promoting come up, it's like Monica just said, right? Like you can do meaningful work because of having been in the position of the parents that you're working with. And so being able to hire people of color who are parents, um, parents, people who have already had experience with your programs, that would be like especially meaningful when you have those opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And I want to build on that and hear what Monica has to say too, because there's some real stuff around that, like how do organizations do their work so they can share power and share space with folks with lived experience or those closest to the issue. Going back to that question, and so Monica, I just want to kind of pass that back to you. Lisa was building on how kind of organizations can do our own work to share power, to share space, to be prepared when we do engage those families who have historically been unengaged, right? Like it's the worst. It's not good when we spend all that time and energy bringing parents and families to the table only to cause harm as an institution, as individuals who are working on behalf of systems and institutions. And so what suggestions may you have on some common pitfalls that may lead to tokenism and how that can be avoided by organizations and systems serving parents and families?
Ways to avoid it, just like Lisa was saying, is making sure that we provide parents with opportunities to maybe facilitate the group or lead the group, or actually giving them the opportunities to run a project or to really give them the opportunity to hear their feedback, to make sure that they are included in the space. There are things that we all have as superpowers or different things that are within our own realm of knowledge that we need to tap into. I started very quiet in a room, and you would not say that, oh, Monica's going to be on a panel talking about parent leadership. When I started as a parent leader, I was quiet. I was in the back. I remember the day I met Sarah, and she was getting ready to do a presentation. And I was like, I don't know how y'all are doing this. But I will say that all of the love, all of the things that were poured into me, and someone saying, you can do this, or hey, can you lead this group, or can you do this, or what about this, and all of the things. So then, when later on, after I had been doing it for a little while, being asked to join the program to, because I do have a different level of expertise because I received the services, and supervising my home visitor is a different level of like fun things. But just to avoid it, it's just to be open to allowing what will happen. You never know the different things that I can come up with because I am the one who's actually receiving those services. But I can be like, oh no, you know that we talked about trust. I really hated the fact that y'all brought all of these things that first day because I didn't get to know Nicole that first day because my head was in this paperwork. And they were like, oh, really? Okay, let's move that to the second visit. Because if we're doing all of these things, collaboration and trust go hand in hand. So when we work together, we're able to build trust. We're able to allow these different things. So to avoid just letting parents just be at the table, create opportunities for them to be able to use their voices in a meaningful and authentic way. Thank you.
Ooh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So much. And so I'll just add on too, again, I think, and Monica, well, both of you, I think could probably relate that there's that weird space where it's like I've been a consumer as a parent and as a family, but I'm also been on the inside of organizations and seeing how it works. So I think that gives an interesting kind of viewpoint and vantage point. Um, in my experience, one thing that's been super helpful when organizations have came and asked for my time and energy and representation, um, is when folks can be like you said, real and authentic about what's possible in terms of the work. Um, and in terms of how much maybe space I, as a parent leader, can take up or really contribute, and how much of it is just really we do just need parents at the table because sometimes there's value to both, right? Like sometimes we do just need parents and families at the table. And we need to go further and say, how can we not just have folks at the table, but parent leaders helping set the table, and really helping guide the strategic plan. But sometimes there's, you know, different opportunities for both. And so in my experience, it can be kind of disheartening when maybe when I've entered a space thinking like, hey, I'm gonna have some like power and some say as a parent leader to contribute to this thing. And it has kind of been communicated as such. And then to come to find out where it's like not so much. We're really just kind of like we're just doing the meetings, we're going through the agendas, but we're not really like making sufficient change as it comes to how parents engage with this system. Um, and so really appreciate y'all. Rokisha, I see that we have you again. I'm wondering if we want to give it another try. If we want to just test the microphone, see if you're here, and if you can introduce yourself and share with us a little bit about yourself and your work. Oh, hey, we got you, Rokisha. We
You
hear
got
you.
me.
Hey,
Woo,
welcome,
thank you, Lord.
welcome,
It was
welcome,
straight.
welcome. Yeah,
Thank
hey,
you.
celebrations for that. We are so glad you made it. Um, Wondering if you just want to share with our audience a little bit about yourself and your work. I know you are a powerhouse parent advocate in the state of Michigan and across the nation. And so wondering if you could just share with our audience a little bit about yourself and the work you're engaged in.
All right. Hi everybody. I'm so sorry for being late, first and foremost, because I like to be on time. Those who know me. But my name is Rokeisha O'Neill. I am a mother of three and a grandmother of four. I'm also a 24-hour child care service. that help families who have children who have discipline issues in school, and not just discipline issues in school, but also just need a family emergency. Say, hey, I just need somebody to watch my child to have a personal time. So I do 24-hour child care service. So shout out to my child care providers who's out here doing the work. I'm also a parent advocate. Again, I have 3 children, and me having 3 children, I wear the mommy hat. And wearing the mommy hat, I just do my thing of thinking about partnership. We have to all work together. I always tell people, think about the Lions. Go Lions. I'm a true Lions fan. If you're not a Lions fan, we gonna become a Lions fan because we are celebrating the Lions wins. You know, we know the Lions kept losing and losing and losing, but at the end of the day, they had to become a team. They had to bring the right people together, and that's how I feel about parent engagement. Parent engagement is just bringing us all together to become a team, because teamwork makes the dream work. But dream work is also, sometimes we all be in our feelings, especially with this election. We know the election hurt all of us, but at the end of the day, we all feeling it. But we all have to grieve together, and not just grieve together, but also come up with solutions together through that grieving process. But go Lions. I love my Lions. They are kicking butts this year. But again, that's how I represent my parents. The parents that I serve, the parents that who I am as a parent, because sometimes we don't have all wins. Sometimes we have lose. And when we lose, we got to believe that sometimes we are gonna come as winners if we all work together. So we got to build that team. So that's how I feel about teamwork and parent engagement, is bringing the team together. Ooh, I did all that in 2 minutes.
Well, look, we've been waiting for you, Rakisha, and so appreciate you, your work, your being on with us. And I think you're right that now more than ever, in terms of this idea of parent leadership and family and parents organizing, uh, we have a serious opportunity in front of us to be building
Yes.
solidarity across the diverse makeup of families and parents in our nation, in our different regions, right? Most of us are here in the Midwest, but we have folks on this call from all across the nation. And then also, how do we have courageous conversations? Knowing that we have parents and families on all sides of the political spectrum, and that we would think at the end of the day, one nonpartisan issue would be children and families. Won't go too much deeper into that, but I think really we need to be focusing on how can we support each other as parents and families in leading this next stage of our work and in our nation. And so really, again, want to just encourage folks to check out some of the orgs that we have represented here. And so again, Rokisha doing a lot of parent advocacy work, but also a member of the National Parents Union, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
doing great work across the nation. Monica Gaines wearing multiple hats, but also part of Healthy Families America. And Lise doing anti-racism work across the state of Michigan and nationally with E-Race. And so really want to encourage folks on the call to check these organizations out. They are resources for us. So, Rokisha, as you were getting on, we were talking some about tokenization and parent leadership and how organizations and systems can go beyond just superficially engaging parents, go beyond just checking the box, and really us exploring what are some common pitfalls around engaging parents and leaders. And so I'm wondering if we can pass it to you in thinking about that, thinking about your work supporting parent leaders across the nation, thinking about your work supporting systems to create space for parent leaders. What suggestions may you have for us on how we can sustain the work of family and parent leadership?
Well, first, get with a team. That's my first thing. I always say get with a team. And what I mean by that is National Parent Union shaped me, but being a Detroiter and just seeing all the discrimination against happening, and if you're a Detroiter and having raising Black and brown children in the community, that right there let us know that we have to have a voice. So we got to get with a team. And being with a team, you have to not just get with anybody, because I have been with different organizations that did me wrong. But at the end of the day, I said, look, I still got a common goal. we have no other choice but to work together. So my number one thing is get with a team. That's the first thing. It's building relationships. You have to have strong relationships, because if you don't have a relationship, you're gonna be angry. And one thing about it is, I don't like to be titled as an angry Black woman. My thing is, I'm not angry. I'm grieving. I'm grieving of all the things that's happening. My Black and brown child is not be able to get the quality education that he or she deserves. So that's one of the things I know that I'm grieving of. I'm not angry. I'm just grieving. And then sometimes you have to be able to speak my language. And if you don't speak my language, you're going to always say I'm angry, which it goes back to the racism. I'm no, don't title me because I'm Black, but also know that I'm a mother who want a successful education for my child from zero all the way to adulthood. I want them to have a successful life. So again, it goes back to everything I do with teamwork, because teamwork makes the dream work.
Appreciate you, Rokisha. And so I want to add on to that a little bit, but I'm also wondering, Monica, Lisa, any thoughts just based on what Rokisha shared, thinking about how organizations can be sustainable or build structures to really sustain the work of collaborating with families and parents?
Doing the research, doing what is needed to make sure that they build policies and practices into the work and become champions for the work. Another organization that I'm tapped into is the Education Development Center. So the Home Visiting Coin has a ton of resources as well when it comes to parent leadership and how to build organizational structures around parents and parent engagement and how to create leaders, or to tap into their own leadership skills and how to continuously grow. But the way to be able to sustain it is to make sure you put it into policy and practice.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna echo two things. I wrote down notes for this answer. The two things I want to repeat that Monica already said are compensate the parents. So that's, if you want sustainability, you have to budget for that. Ongoing, right? Like that has to be part of it. And then the other aspect that you mentioned is policy change. Like if it's written into policy, there's going to be more effort put towards actually making it happen. If it's just a hope or a goal, that's not strong enough and it won't support the sustainability. If that's what you really want to see, you have to put it into policy.
Rokisha, you got more to add to that? You were coming off mute? Go for it.
I'm definitely for what Monica and Liz said. We both need to be compensated. Money is the problem, because if I'm not working, I need to get there. So gas costs. We know gas are $3.88 now. So I mean $3.29 now. But at the end of the day, we know that would get them to point A to point B. So yes, paying them, and stronger policies need to be in place. But we also need to use the word accountability. And we, as parents, we need to start assessing things. And once we start assessing, then we can say, hey, this not working for the parent or the child or the school. So we can go back and revisit and say, hey, this not working. Let's find something that works together. But that policy and show me the money is always the answer.
Yes, yes, thank you. And so shout out to all the organizations that are serving families and parents, that are including them in their strategic planning, that are including them in their budgeting. Shout out to all the orgs that are doing that. And if you aren't, there's opportunity, right? And there's many organizations who would love to support you. But when we talk about tokenization, and really authentically engaging family and parents, it's about sharing space, it's about sharing power, and it's about sharing resources. And if we're not doing that, we may be falling into that tokenization, checking the box category. And our nation, our families, and our children need, for those most marginalized families, Black and brown families, to be centered. We need to hear the voice of Black and brown families, so we know which direction to go. And so really, really, really appreciate y'all. I want to keep the conversation going and thinking about, again, organizations servicing historically marginalized families, families who have experienced a lot of harm, Rokisha, I really appreciate you even just mentioning how, again, some parents and families interface with institutions. There are many families who have a right to be angry, who have a right now to be somewhat fearful. And that can show up in different ways when they engage with institutions. And we also know that as institutions that are often backed by the states, that get a lot of grant funding, and that have certain kind of ways of being, that we can cause harm. That as human beings, period, that we can cause harm. And so I'm wondering if we have any ideas, examples, or experiences around what can organizations do when harm has been caused, right? And so, for example, an organization may have engaged me as a parent leader, and I may have left that organization or that initiative on a sour note, right? Recognizing that I felt like I was being tokenized, that, folks were they just wanted me to be there, but they didn't really want me to add value to the work. When that happens, what suggestions do we have around what could be done in terms of from the organization side or the parent leader side? And so basic question, what can be done when harm is caused? Because it will be caused when we're working together in society, in the world. Any thoughts there?
Well, I'm gonna do my favorite. One, you got to make awareness. You have to bring it to the. You know how people say in my neighborhood, they say put it on the table. You have to put it on the table. You have to address it because if you'll be the elephant in the room. So you have to address it. First of all, once you be aware of it, the second thing is solutions. We have one mind. 5 minds is better than one mind because we're going to come up with teamwork ideas to make it better. So again, I love the word teamwork. But at the end of the day, you have to be aware of it because you're not aware of it, you're gonna keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we see that that's what's happening with our education system. And also, once you talk about it, the solution part come together. That's how the boycott came together when they did the boycott in Martin Luther King time. But we have to talk about it, be about it, and have solution about it. And be about it is saying, hey, this don't work, but yet this the ideas we came up with. So National Parent Union, for example, I had a situation where a parent get kicked out of school. I couldn't just come up with an idea. I brought a team together, say, hey, we need to have a parent complaint and let's come up with a parent complaint. And then when we go to the board meeting, now we have enough parents to say, hey, it's not just happening to my child, it's happening to numbers of children. So you have to get them stories out. You have to talk about it, to be about it. So again, I like to put it on the table.
I really appreciate that. And I just want to add in, if I can myself, you mentioned assessing, you mentioned putting things on the table, and you had mentioned solutions. And so I think that's important, especially from parent leaders, right? That oftentimes, and organizers, and I'm saying this as someone who has experience doing community organizing, doing organizing on behalf of my children, and in many different forms, that it's so easy to call out the issue or the problem, but it's oftentimes a lot harder and a lot more work to work towards solutions. And so I think it's really important, Rokisha, that you mentioned that, and especially as parent leaders, that we don't look for other folks, right? We don't look to the institution. We don't look to the system as a whole to find those solutions, that we really, in the words of Grace Lee Boggs, we are the leaders we've been waiting for. And so that it is really up to us as parents and families to find those solutions and to help organizations that are servicing parents and families to come up with those, right? That we're not waiting on the person in the Cape, we're not waiting on the organization, right? We are the ones who are coming with those solutions. And it's up to us as parents to help support a culture of care that can make that happen, right? When we talk about working class parents and the ability to show up and advocate on behalf of other parents and families, that it sounds good, but for a lot of our parents and families, they don't have the time and the energy. And so we have to acknowledge that as well. I want to open it up, Monica and Lise, see if there's any other thoughts, and then address some of the questions and comments that have came in through the chat. But just opening it up, any other just general thoughts about things that we've discussed so far before we open it up to the chat?
Yeah, I wanted to when you're talking, Jacob, about restoration of relationships after harm, I think that that can take place anywhere in any of our lives. And I think especially when it's in like an organizational setting, that there's really a need to recognize, take responsibility, apologize. And one of my coworkers, colleagues, um, has learned and has taught me that a good apology, you have to mean it in the first place, but then to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, or like, we're sorry, we were wrong, and we're going to do our best to not do that thing again, right? Like, it's an apology doesn't really mean anything, I think, if you then turn around and do that same thing again. And so actually changing behavior or changing, whatever needs to change about the organization. Um, if it was a policy that caused harm, you need to change that policy. If it was a practice that caused harm, you need to work on getting your staff to not do that thing again, right? Whatever the thing is. So really about being open to learning and doing better and changing behavior or changing organizational practice, however that looks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for adding on to that. And I think now more than ever, right? When we think about organizations who expose values of equity, of anti-racism, of care for families and parents, that always we have an opportunity to show and prove that. But I think with the changing of seats in our national, statewide, and local election, political arenas, that there's a lot of opportunity for us as parents to hold systems accountable, and for organizations, specifically those within the early childhood system, to show and prove their commitment towards equity in families. And so, thank y'all. I want to address a couple questions that have came in the chat. We've got a few, and so we likely won't be able to answer them all. We will do our best for those in the audience to follow up with a Q&A document addressing some of the questions that have came up. So, one question: how does language accessibility work for parents who want to participate? Any thoughts around challenges that may come up due to language barriers? And I know this is a pretty common question that's came up multiple times in the past, but wondering if y'all have any thoughts around how language accessibility comes up for parents and challenges in recruiting and engaging parents in an authentic way around language.
Jacob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a mother who battled with literacy, right? So language barriers was always a problem with me. So partnership with people you trust. I partnered with my teachers because it was hard for me. I had speech, and speech was always hard for me. So I had to partner with teachers. Say, hey, sometimes I can't pronounce this word for my child to even spell this word. So partnership and not being afraid to speak your own truth. Because I tell people all the time, people like, you shouldn't tell people that. I said, why not? Because I'm not afraid of it. Are you? Because at the end of the day, it didn't define me as a mother, and it did not define me as an individual. But most of all, it showed me that I had courage to stand up to ask for help. So that's one of the things that I encourage my parents, because yeah, you're gonna have barriers, and you not may sometimes not be able to speak that language, but you get you a team of people that can speak that language for you, and we gonna get the job done. So sometimes it's the parents have to get out of that fear of what if or what people think of me. It's not what they think of you, it's what you're going to ask for help for to help you and your family to succeed. And that's how I look at life. I have barriers. I wasn't, we can't just let people who have a disability just let them stay down. We have to pick them back up. And that's how I feel about my IEP students, which is individual education plan. We have to make that plan for that individual to help them. So as a parent, my main thing was it ain't about what you can do for me. It's what we can help together to make this a successful child. It was about partnership. So, get over that fear of not speaking that language. They got your child in that school. They're getting money for your child on count day. So you part of the team. So get out of that language barrier and just get it done. So that's my solution, and that's my awareness of what we need to do. Stop getting out of your feelings. Speak up if you need help, and if you don't need help, help those who do need help.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Rokisha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts, Monica? And listen, no pressure. We have a few more questions, but just thinking about language barriers or language access and how that plays a part or halts up our parent leadership work.
Absolutely. So much of what Rakisha said stands out. The biggest thing that I was always taught is that as parents, we have the most powerful voice in the room because we are the ones who are actually receiving those services. But when you have these language barriers, relationships, tapping into the same resources that you're utilizing to provide services, using those services to come in to set up a space for places for the families to be able to provide feedback in a room. So getting in touch with a translator or finding someone in the community who speaks the same language, finding different resources that support the work. I'm big on acronym sheets or whatever needs to be done to make sure that someone feels comfortable in a space, removing whatever barrier, allowing a friend or a family member to come with them to translate, whatever needs to happen for those voices to be in the room, allow for that to be able to occur.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, thinking about translation, or I always mix up translation and interpretation, but like that could be another thing that you build into your budget, right? If you have one or more families where that's a barrier, then that's about accessibility, and that's something that the institution has more resources to provide than that individual family is going to have. And so that could be another thing to consider and to budget for before it becomes a thing that you need, right? Like these are ways that we can show that our organizations are committed to listening and to making changes by doing some of those proactively.
Thanks, Shaw. Thanks. That's an important question, and I'll just add on. I think about the word advocate, allies, co-conspirators. It has been said a few times around the importance of relationships and this idea of authentically engaging parents and families, in that culture can also create barriers. And again, as I mentioned before, I think about systems and institutions just kind of naturally sometimes creating barriers and walls. And so I think it really, really, really calls for advocates and allies and co-conspirators to help us see the shadows or the blind spots, especially as it comes to culture and language. I have seen it many times, and I think it's just a natural occurrence that organizations don't know how to engage or interface with certain cultures and families if they just don't have that lived experience, right? So we need an advocate or an ally who can kind of help show that blind spot and say, hey, we have a whole demographic of parents and families in our community that we are not reaching because we have this barrier due to language. And so just really calling on folks who are on this call or may be in positions and in relationships with families and institutions, that it's, again, we are the leaders we've been waiting for. And so it is up to us to stand in the gaps and to help inform the organizations and institutions on what more they can be doing to reach parents and families. And we realize, even at the National Center, that we have a lot of work to do there, right? This idea of language being a barrier And even this webinar itself, right? Like it would be great in the future for us to offer this webinar in multiple languages for our parents and families across the nation. And so I want to move on to another question here. Let's see. So 1 second here, going through a few. Okay, so there's a question. I'm going to kind of try to synthesize it, but how do we keep our parents involved in seeing the big picture of their voice and in their engagement, and how that will be heard beyond the font size or the picture on the website, or the platform, and the landing pages, right? How do we keep our parents involved to see the big picture, that their voice will be heard beyond what we need as a font size for the website, and a photo for a landing page that will that eventually their platform, the reason for joining the parent engagement for early childhood, will be heard and not lose them. And so I think the what I was pulling out is, how may we encourage parents who, again, may be in that space where they're starting to sense that they are maybe being used or misused by an organization based on their racial, gender, sexual identity, right? Like what suggestions may we have to parents who feel like, hey, this institution just wants me so they can put me on their website and to say that I was a part of it and so they can check their box. What suggestions may we have for parents in that situation? I think that'll be a good kind of closeout question.
Okay, I guess I go first. One of the things is, you will be used, and that's just the real deal. You will be used, but at the end of the day, it starts with you. You better work on that feeling, because there's a lot of organizations that use my name, and I had to tell them, you better stop using my name before I get me an attorney, because you know you're not right, because you got one or two parents coming to meetings, and you know multiple parents should be here, because you got Title I funding, and not just Title I funding, you have state funding from the federal grants. So I want to be hold you accountable when parents don't show up, but you're not about to use my name showing up and showing out. That's first and foremost. It starts with the parents. You have to be aware. It goes back to the awareness. Once you're aware that somebody using you, that's like a relationship. And you keep getting used, you know it's a sign of abuse. And poverty pimping is real in these nonprofit organizations. They see the weakest or person and they use their name and say, "Hey, I just want to use you." No, enough is enough, because at the end of the day, that parent gonna bad mouth that organization, and we wonder why that organization don't have nobody there, because parents is tired up. They tired. So you can't use and do poverty pimping to parents. It's over with, because parents are now aware of it. So one, you got to be aware of it and say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not about to be a token for this organization that's using me. And a lot of organizations know Rokeisha O'Neal have walked away from, and they know who they are. I don't have to call them out, because their numbers talk for themselves. And I dropped the mic.
Love it. Thank you, Rokeisha. We appreciate you, and we will make sure to share your info for those who want to connect. Monica or Lisa, any thoughts? And no pressure, but any thoughts on that question?
Absolutely. I agree. Acknowledge it. But as parents, recognizing, like I said earlier, that your voice is the most important voice, learning how to tell your story, the importance of your story, how to use your voice, how to tell your story in a way that is powerful and meaningful, and standing in your story and owning it, and being okay with, just like she said, they may use you, but standing up for yourself, and being careful with who you are and with your story. So just love on yourself in the same way that they aren't, but make sure you know who you are. And when you walk into these rooms, they wouldn't have this funding if it wasn't for you. So know that you have that power, you have that authority, own it, walk in your own grace, and do what you need to do to make sure that they don't continue to do it. Make sure you state your claim. Don't just let it happen and just walk away. Say why you're leaving, be okay with why you're leaving, and go do it in a way that provides positive impact for those who will come behind you.
Absolutely agree with what Rokesha and Monica are saying. I think I would add that sometimes it makes sense to be strategic about how you respond. You know, if you have the energy, um, and you can reach out to some other parents, you know, talk about it. The thing that I want to repeat that Rokesha said a couple times is that, like, find your team, right? Like, don't try to do any of it alone. We don't have the energy, we don't have the time to do any of this alone. Find those other people who are aligned with you, and maybe you're strategic and there's like a feedback meeting and you don't go and give it, but other people go and say the same message, right? But and you don't have to say, oh, I came because this person sent me, right? Like, there's ways that we can um that we've seen be effective in Kalamazoo, in like local government, county level government, um inside and outside organizers working together, right? People who know how change happens with all the rules inside the organization, sharing that information with folks who are outside organizers, putting pressure to change, right? And parents are sort of in an in-between space. And so how do you be strategic and find those numbers of the people to do it with you, because we can't make the change that we need to see alone.
And I just want to add one more thing, y'all. Just one more thing. Somebody's always watching.
Mm,
You'd be surprised that somebody's always watching. So you may think that you're getting away with something, but always remember somebody is watching. So somebody's going to report you. So that's right there. My battle. When I drop the mic, I always say, be careful of who you hurt, because somebody's always watching. So they always can double back and get you.
that's right. Thank you, Rokesha. Thank you all. And now I'll just end it on this with our 30 seconds left. Let's be revolutionary in our parent leadership and family organizing work. And revolutionary in the sense of re-evolving ourselves to the best state of humanity that we can for families and babies. Like Lee said, let's be strategic in that work. Like Rokesha and Monica said, let's do that together in unity with other parent leaders. Let's find our team. Let's be in relationship. And so please know that you have support here with us on this call. I just dropped the National Center for Family and Parent Leadership's website, but really just want to thank you all for being on this call today. And we will follow up with some more links from our panelists and resources to everyone who's registered today. So keep up the great work for parents and families, and take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Peace.